This was like when I was hanging out. Yeah. I saw it. I was like, can I do it? I call this meeting to order at 4:02 p.m. This is the first Senate meeting I will be leading, so bear with me a little bit. If I could have Malia do roll call.
Lydia, here. Isaac,
Here.
Zach,
Here.
Anna,
Not here.
Caitlin, here. Asia, Joel, Joel,
Not here.
Javier,
Not here.
Ariana, here. Ian,
Here.
Ted,
Here.
Megan, here. Shandon, Currency, Leandre, here is the blue. Here. Wait. Aaron, he's on his way, he's ready.
Leandre's on his way too.
Okay, Priya, here. Adrian. Anna. Anna. Jason,
Here.
Nicholas,
Here.
Kate, here. Matthew, here. Gabriella. Matsuko, here. Eddie. Anish.
Here.
Gavin. Chun.
Here.
I'm not calling you.
I get a motion to approve the minutes of May 15th, 2024. Move to approve minutes from May 8th. Ian? I second. So Isaac moves to approve the minutes of May 15th, seconded by Ian. Are there any objections? The minutes are approved. Are there any public comments? No public comments. Are there any advisor announcements?
Thank you. This rate might be done in, just kidding. First of all, I welcome Luca for facilitating his very first meeting with Sarah. Great, started. I just want to say a couple of things, mainly to our new incoming senators. Several of you have already contacted us about missing training because of one conflict or another. So I just really want to reiterate the importance of these mandatory trainings for both the spring one coming up, the last one we have next Friday, and the ones that we have in the fall. I know some of you have made travel arrangements already, but we had posted this long before you all ran for these positions. And so, we know that this is a conflict every year, but we really want to push you to try hard to reschedule those flights, do whatever you can to make sure that you are here in the fall. Okay, so please pass that along to all the other internal officers and such, because we've been getting quite a few requests that you can't make it or you have a conflict. But you all knew when you took on these positions that those are mandatory. Okay. The other thing is I have something fun. If you read the paper today, I think it came out today. Jared upstairs in Power Cup is doing some promotional stuff. Thank you to the marketing committee and Chris, who's been working with this initiative, right? Is that you guys? I want to make sure I give credit where credit is due for the specialty drinks.
Yes.
That are based off like DSAP stuff. So I have two $5 gift cards that I'm gonna raffle off at the end, okay, so that you all can go upstairs and support. You can get any drink you want, but we'll raffle these off. And then I had these two. My daughter loves Squishmallows, and I told her, I said, I have to get rid of some of them. So she's like, okay, I'll give two. And I was like, you know, I'm sure I have students here that love this. So is there anybody here that would like? Oh my God. Oh, wow. Okay, well, I think what I'll do is maybe at the end, we'll do two different kinds of raffles. Those that want this, we'll put your name placards on the floor and we'll pick two, and then we'll do this for everybody that wants it. Okay? I actually might bring some more because I'm not kidding you. She's got like 50 of these things, which I told her moratorium on everything. I'm like, you can't get it. Okay. I think that's all that I have. Oh, yeah. So grab your name tag, okay?
You don't belong here.
Are there any other advisor announcements?
And if we're, so we usually take Chuck up here first and then whoever's on.
Wait.
Oh, so, okay, so, I mentioned some of this last week, briefly, but. So, admin committee, so I mentioned some of this last week, just bring more information, so admin committee and and we're working on bylaws and election code changes. And then, probably not this year, but most likely in the fall, we'll also look at the code of conduct, which hasn't been reviewed in like 10 or more years. But I'm working on the draft versions, you know, the editable Word documents for all of those, not just the bylaws and elections code, but also all the other committee codes, and I'll be sending those out to all the 23, 24 and 24, 25 chairs, so that they can be reviewed. You know, you guys can be free to make any kinds of changes you want, but the main change is that, you know, you need to definitely happen. ES hasn't approved at all yet, so there's lots of changes on that one, but for the rest of them, it's mainly going to be, if they're even listed, at least in the duties section, you know, updating the vice chairs, because those have been removed as official separate positions. And then I've also noticed, because I was working with Malia and we were looking at proposed code, and we noticed there are some inconsistencies in the, not necessarily the Article 1 where the positions are just listed, but I think it's Article 2 where like the duties are listed for each position. And you know, some have chairs, some don't, some have vice chair, some don't. And so that's another thing I'll be, you know, I'll be pointing out just so you guys can review that.
Are there any advisor announcements on Zoom?
Yeah, Danny, do you want to go first?
I just would like to remind everybody that we do have the mini flea market next Tuesday in the main quad from 11 to 4. I'm sorry about that. So come on out, take a look at what some of our vendors have to sell. And we have some fun activities out there as well with some of our clubs. Thank you.
And then
For me, few things. One, I sent a calendar invite to all of our current DSG executives and senators, as well as the newly elected DSG executives and senators. So if you could please take a look at that, because there's actually an RSVP form. We need your RSVP for the Student Leadership Recognition Gala. Obviously, we expect all of you there. We communicate this quite a bit, but there is more information we need, such as dietary needs, as well as your, particularly those of you who are transferring and graduating, your, where you're going next, details of the degree you're earning if you're graduating, things like that. So just because you've told us, don't assume that it's all good. Please check out the calendar invite and fill out the RSVP form. So again, that gala is June 5th, but it would be very helpful if you could complete the RSVP at least a week before the 29th. So again, we can make sure we have enough food and that we have all of your awesome accomplishments and next steps in the slideshow. Let's see. One thing I wanted to note on behalf of student accounts, a reminder, we are coming very close to the end of the fiscal year, the academic year. They're aligned. And if you have not submitted your receipts and forms get reimbursed yet, please do so ASAP, because we are coming close to the end of the year. And once the fiscal year is done, that money is gone. Fund 41 funds are not rolling over to next year. So if you bought things for any past DSG events and have not gone reimbursed yet, you have to do it like immediately this month, preferably, because June is going to be very busy for student accounts. So let's do Lisa and Jennifer a solid and not wait till the last minute. If you have questions on how to do those forms, do let us know. But the deadline to submit these forms in order to be processed by June is June 14th. That is Friday, I believe, June 14th. You can still submit things June 15th through 30th. Just know it's going to probably not be processed until mid-July, because again, they're very backed up. But after June 30th, that's it. So please reach out to me or Dennis. We're happy to help if you have questions on how to do those forms. But and then club funds roll over, but again, it's going to be delayed if you're waiting too late in June. Very, very last thing, I just want to gently remind all of you about the Discord. The DSG Discord is considered an official communication channel for the DeAnza student government. So that server, we have that linked on the DeAnza website. We promote it as a way to reach all of you. People have office hours on there. That is representing all of you, your committees, the student government, and the college. Yes, that includes the memes channel and the joking channel, the silly channel. I don't mean you can't joke around and be silly, but I do want to just gently remind you, I'm in there, and if any person looks in there, how would you feel about that being associated with you and the student government? So just a friendly, gentle reminder about that. I know we talked about this in fall training, but I know maybe for interns and then incoming folks, I just wanted to mention that. That's it for me.
Yeah, I think that's it for advisor announcements. Are there any Senate announcements?
Everyone, I just wanted to give one quick final reminder about the student leadership award. Nominations are due Sunday, May 19th, so please try to get it in before then. You can nominate yourself and others, and this award is for any student who has displayed leadership. You can find the link in the DASG announcements chat, in the DMs Discord, and on the website as well. Please.
Yeah, I just have a question for the advisors. Would you happen to know when we'll get paid for winter? We'll be submitting all the final information to initially. So it's like an estimate at all, or like in a couple weeks? Yeah, hopefully within a week, maybe two in most.
We apologize, this is a new process for us, so we hope that after this year, it will be, the turnaround will be much.
Any other senator? Yeah.
So hi everyone, so HEPAS is having its 10th annual summit. It's gonna be on June 7th. The goal is to engage a safe space, which increases our inner strength to take back our power as undocumented students and allies. It would be from 10:30 to 3:30 at the conference rooms A and B. And then we also have a upcoming event, which will be this Friday for our DocuSign sister program of HEPAS, which is the DocuSign conference will also be in the conference room A and B from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There will be food and workshops, and there will be a panel list of undocumented professionals.
Yeah, so mini flea market for spring 2024, it's next Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have a caricature artist coming from 12 to 2. And there are limited spots, so it is time for come for serve. There are performances, so by NBA from noon to 12:30, and 4 Elements Hip Hop from 1 p.m. to 1:30. And in the Senate chat, I dropped like the link for the volunteer schedule. Go ahead and fill that out, get your field hours, your intern projects, yada yada. I think.
Yeah. So in case you didn't see Lydia's message, we're planning a DASG and ASFC bonding. They just finished their elections. So we're trying to see what day is best. So right now we are deciding between Saturday, May 25th, up until Monday, May 27th, which is Memorial Day. I will bump the vote in the Senate chat, but whichever day has the most votes, that's when we're gonna start planning everything. And Rhea and I as well are going to be making a Google spreadsheet for things to bring as well too, so food, drinks, etc.
So yeah, I also just sent the mini flea market sign-up sheet, and then there's also a transfer center celebration with mentors at DHG, and I think, I don't know anyone else, but it's on June 5th. And we need people from DHG to help out with that as well, so I put the sign-up sheet, so some field of our opportunity.
Is there any other senator announcements? Okay. Moving on to student trustee announcements. What about external shared governance committee reports?
Equity Action Council met today, and after speaking to them about the diversity seats proposal that they have so far, they had some suggestions specifically regarding not making any groups feel left out. So kind of like the overall like feeling was like it's better to include every group than not, I guess. And then they also mentioned the community invitation rubric. There's currently a team working on designing the rubric for inviting off-campus organizations to the ANZA to ensure student safety, which had, like, just a reminder, like it was after the incident with Border Patrol coming on campus. And then they discussed the strategic planning equity plan reimagined and are taking in opinions about how we can track equity practices being implemented on campus and how to gather information on its effects, on like the effects of those practices. And then lastly, they had a governance reflection discussing their bylaws, opening conversations and suggestions such as making sure we have different people from different levels of governance on the committee and discuss potentially adding a student as a chair for their shared governance.
I met with curriculum committee on Tuesday. We went through course outline, lab components, learning outcomes, course objectives, learning outcomes of CS LOs, and we reviewed it for 14 courses, proposed courses. And we also went through basic information listed on the course development options as well as specification, and looked at its relation to the GE form and essential student materials as well as essential college materials.
Any other external shared governance committee? Is up?
Wrapped that yesterday, and we're going through personnel hiring, review in our individual groups. I actually, maybe once we start reconciliation, I'll bring up all of the positions that might be interesting right now, because right now we're just kind of like reviewing a certain number of positions. But then once we get to the broader conversation, I kind of want to get a feel with how people feel about certain positions. I know there's one position that caught my eye, because I remember it was Isaac, and we brought it up, and it's the honors activity coordinator. So that position is, a request has been submitted for that position. So, yeah, I don't know, if that's something you guys want to talk about.
We would advocate for that, because if you think about it, getting like the TAP program done for like $100,000 a year, it's not a bad deal.
Is it confirmed that if we get an honors coordinator?
Well, along with the other requirements, but getting an honors coordinator is like, you're basically getting like 67% to work.
All right, I'll keep that in mind. I think Adi, your group is in charge of talking about that one right now. So because you're in rap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your group is, so whether we get UCLA top or not, it might fall on you, so.
Oh, yeah.
No pressure. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, so academic senate met on Monday, and I guess just two things to kind of highlight. One of them was an update on zero technical costs happening in college, so there will be a zero technical cost math pathway at Dianza by fall 2025, and there will be one for kinesiology at Dianza by fall 2026. And then the academic senate is working on getting more grants, continue to get more zero technical cost. And then there was kind of a report from the GE committee, which just basically covers the GEs that you kind of need to graduate from Dianza. And you're trying to align it with CalGet, but I think the other like a few more requirements. Yeah.
Any other external shared governance committee reports? Okay, moving on to internal DHA committee reports. Yeah.
So programs met yesterday and we went over the committee code. We still need to go over the ES one. And then we talked about, we looked at the EcoFund application, like the revised version that simplifies it. So we'll probably bring it to Senate next week to approve it. And then the mini flea market, as Ian mentioned, is happening next week. So be sure to help out with that. Transfer Center event, June 5th. And then Carnival, we're trying to figure out how to revise it because we didn't get approval for like our quote unquote main attractions. So we're working on that.
Administration met today, and we talked with SRE about potential diversity changes and maybe changing it to something called advocacy instead. About it, yeah.
Marketing as well as stuff in progress, they folks, mental health speakers at conferences, welcome there. And reminder that they're for skin confidence.
Oh, SRE met today and we reviewed how the spring resource year went. Just talked about how we felt about the programs and how students that could be outside. And then we also talked about the proposal to talk to admin on diversity.
diversity seats being changed to actually.
Finance met on Monday and we discussed changing of the budget request form to make it like easier for programs, and we're also looking to review the timeline of the deliberation process. Maybe making the interviews a little bit earlier, and then we're also hoping to like interview the students served by the program to better understand their needs. Also looking into increasing like the finance outreach and just like looking to do more community projects.
Any other internal DHG committee reports? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Isaac,
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Isaac moved to approve the consent calendar and Caitlin, seconded. So the consent calendar is approved. And now moving on to business item 1, affordable student housing. If I could have, Layla?
Yes.
Layla.
Hi, I'm Layla. I'm an FAPAC intern, which is our faculty union for Foothill and Dianza, a student internship program for the political action of that. But I'm here as a member of the Affordable Housing Task Force. Basically, we have been working this year and before I was on it as well, to advocate that the district use the money allocated in the Measure G bond. Right now, we have about $200 million allocated for affordable student housing. And the Board of Trustees made a decision last Monday, not this week, but the week before, to officially recommend that we have employee and student housing. So we're going to have employee housing cited for on campus at Foothill, and then student housing near campus at Dianza. So that applies to everybody in the district. So all employees would have the opportunity to get housing at Foothill, and all students at both colleges would get the opportunity to apply for housing near campus at Dianza. But there is currently a site for Foothill for employee housing. There is not currently a site for student housing yet. So we're trying to get some feedback from our shared governance groups about, like, if you were looking for housing, what would you need that to look up for you? And if you have like questions or concerns that you would want the board to consider, the task force to consider as we push for this to happen this week. Yeah, there's a Google form. Lydia or Luca, you guys could share that with everybody, but first step. Yeah, here it has some examples of like hypothetical sites. Nothing is officially confirmed, but if we can get like input about what you guys think would make the most sense for student housing, and then also these are right here are the surveys that have already been done. So we have surveys from Brailsford and Dunleavy, as well as the Bowles Company, who is currently the consultant working with the district to plan out the housing project. Yeah, so there's just a couple of questions about like what would be a good affordable living situation for you? What would be an affordable rent for you? And then what other thoughts you would want to share, any questions you have?
I had a quick question. Why is Foothill including housing prioritized over student housing?
Right, so as a task force, we want to prioritize student housing. The reason why we currently don't have a site for Dianza is, honestly, I don't know. But we've been trying to push for on-campus housing at Dianza, but we've kind of not really been given that as an option. So there's a lot of kind of debate over like the Flint Center site is like currently, there's a lot considering the Measure G mega project as well as the, potential clinic site that was also considered as a housing site. So there's a lot of like kind of dispute around
How's the funding gonna go in terms of,
that.
how's the funding for the Flinthill?
Right. I don't know. The board is kind of just like approved that the 200 million would go towards both of them. They did, however, mention in their like approval of the Measure G allocation, because they reallocated the money from what was supposed to replace the Flint Center. They gave 20 million of that to Foothills for their dental clinic. And with that decision, they mentioned that the 200 million originally set aside for housing is open to dipping, I guess, if we have additional infrastructure needs. So we're trying to push for decisions to be made regarding housing so that we could actually have a chance to do that, because the longer we wait, the more money we lose. And the less likely we're gonna even have something from this.
Sorry for the, wouldn't two buildings spread out the cost more than per se than doing one building?
I'm not entirely sure. In the feasibility studies, it mentions like what is possible given the funds that we have. Also, the district is considering a pain-free option, which is a public-private partnership, meaning that they would work with a private company to leverage the funds that we have and expand the amount of money that we have. Yeah, so not sure, but it's also been kind of mentioned a lot that most faculty, most employees don't really want to live with their students, just like most students don't want to like go home next to their professor. But yeah.
Yeah, so part of it, I don't think is necessarily prioritization. I mean, part of it is there's available land at Brookdale,
Right.
and what available land at the ends is much, you know, there's still a lot more going on there.
Right.
And finding land near the answer that will take some time. And then part of it is also the, you know, results of the survey. Foothill doesn't have great public transit and so on in its area.
It's also,
So,
yeah, it's, sorry to interrupt. It's also kind of like a food desert in that area. And so the thinking was that employees who are generally pretty well situated would have an easier time like getting food versus students, they're living there and they just have to like figure everything out. And it's not a great location, not very well.
yeah, and again, the survey also kind of reflected that, you know, most of the students did not, you know, respond favorably to something on or near Foothill, but were more favorable to something on or near the Anza. Whereas with faculty and staff and so on, it's less of an issue.
If I could add to that, as well, I think for students, generally their priorities are more like they want to be close to their classes. So Foothill students did express like a desire to live on or near Foothill campus, but just in terms of the practicalities of what it would be like living there, I feel like, yeah, that's kind of how they came to that. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to business item 2, I want to preface that this can be a sensitive topic for some folks, and just to keep an open mind and hear the presentation. And with that, I introduce Daniel Costa.
Good afternoon. I apologize if I'm talking a little slower than I normally would because allergies are killing me and I'm all stuffed up. And I can hear myself very loud right now. So who's the trustee? Where's the trustee for, I'm sorry, you're the one that goes to our PCA. No. Javier.
Yeah, I don't think Javier is here, and then Iris here.
Yeah,
Or
Iris,
Jim
right.
coming. Oh, there you are, sorry.
All right, so
we put it out there, the police department, I'm considering arming our officers, or staff with tasers. And I wanted to make sure that I put it out as soon as we came up with this idea of doing that, because I know it's gonna take a long process. I don't wanna do the research and then come up and bring it up to everybody else, so. At our police chief's advisory committee, we brought it up. And we're literally just starting the research on a lot of it, so it's really early in the process. Even if the Board of Trustees approved it today, we're about a year away from actually getting to that point. So we are probably technically about a year and a half, closer to 2 years. I understand that you're getting this information early. So why do I want to have the officers carry tasers? Currently, officers carry pieces of equipment on them. You're all aware of the firearm that they carry. They also carry a baton, OC spray, and pretty much it. So if they have to deal with something, matter of fact, I'll use an example that occurred a few months ago over at Mission College. There was a burglary there. The officers got there. The perpetrator ran away, and they never caught him. They went back, they were processing the crime scene. And a few minutes later, perpetrator shows up. This time he showed up with an axe. And he was coming after them. So they gave him directions to drop it and all that. So they had two options at that point. And ask for a baton, you have to get close to somebody to actually use it. OC spray, you have to get fairly close. And I'll be honest, OC spray actually works better on me than it does in any suspect I ever had spray. It just, I sound worse than I do now. I get all stuffed up, I can't see. So it actually works pretty good on police officers. So they had a decision to make. The other two options that these two Santa Clara officers had. They had the LC spray, the baton, you have to get close. Person standing and coming towards them with an axe. So they could either use the firearm or the taser. They use the taser. The individual dropped. He was incapacitated. They were able to handcuff them. They handcuffed them safely and took them off to jail. The other option is actually using the firearm. And that's where a lot of officers have that conundrum. What do? Do you use the firearm or the taser? So we needed something in between the baton and the OC spray. There is one other tool that we do have, and it's a high impact bag that comes from a modified shotgun, but that's usually kept in the car. So when you deal with an individual, you may need something immediately. You can't go running back to the car, grab it, and then utilize it. And again, both provide a greater distance. So it's basically trying to cover that gap that we have between the baton and the firearm. Because if the baton, OC spray don't work, what's our next option? There's the firearm. And in the history of this police department, not one shot's been fired. Not one. And yet, our property room is full of weapons, shotguns, handguns, swords, nunchucks, all kinds of weapons. But not one shot's been fired, and I think that's great. It speaks highly of the police department, the officers that have been here. But I'd like to make sure that that stands. And making it safe and trying to prevent having to use a firearm. So that's the bottom line and the purpose of it. Are there issues with the taser? Yes. There's a lot of issues with firearms. There's issues with OC spray. There's issues with baton as well. There's not one tool that is 100%. I can't have somebody, an individual that I may have to take into custody, and I can tell you that this tool is gonna do it. That's not accurate. There have been individuals who have been tased, OC sprayed, and a baton's been used on them. And they still keep going. So it's, and how do you guess, how do you know which what's gonna work with one person and not the other? I've seen individuals as, the biggest Irish here that they're on drugs, handcuffed, and they broke the handcuffs. Now, those are exceptions, but you never know when you're gonna have that exception as well. So, a lot of studies and a lot of research has gone into the tasers. They were initially brought out, when they brought out like in 2005-ish is when they were utilized. And a lot of police departments started using them. It took about 5 to 10 years to actually get a lot of field studies. Now, what I mean by field studies is those cases that were actually utilized out in the field. So with those studies, it actually showed that several things, that injuries to officers, injuries to perpetrators, and costs, and fewer shootings. A lot of these, the numbers actually panned out. Now, you look at the numbers now, and some of them have gone up, some of them have gone down. But the tasers overall remain probably one of the safer tools, believe it or not. As officers, when you get trained to use a taser, you actually get tased yourself, so that you can tell what it's going to be like. Have people died after being tased? Yes. Like I said, nothing is 100%. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's in the high 90s of those that have died and only been tased. Most of the time, there's drugs involved, medical issues, a lot of other things that happen to individuals. It may be having a mental illness episode, a crisis. But how do you identify those things too, when somebody's coming at you, fighting you? And I actually, when I worked at San Jose, I worked internal affairs. One of the cases I had there, an individual died after he fought, I think it was about 4 or 5 officers. The OC sprayed him, they hit him with a baton, they tased them, he continued fighting. Eventually, they got more officers, they were able to arrest him. He passed away. The mother called me for something. And then she started asking me questions. When I asked her about, or when I explained to her everything, and I explained to her how most people had some sort of alcohol or narcotics in their blood system. And her son was known to use a lot of drugs. So she asked me a question that was, I thought, pretty insightful especially for a mother. And that was, how do you know when an individual is under the influence of narcotics? Does anybody know how you would find out and confirm that? So usually you'd have an individual in front of you, you have them follow your finger, look at their nystagmus, pupils, pulse. I forget what the lumbar test is available too. You know, if you're counting to 30 or let us know when 30 seconds is up, they're usually off. There's all these tests that you have to do. That's how we do that. But when somebody's fighting you, and this was her comment, if somebody's fighting you, how do you know that they're under the influence of drugs? You don't. You really don't. It may look like it. They may be going through a crisis. They may just be maybe going through a mental illness of sorts. But you don't. You just don't know that. So again, going back to what I like to do is fill that gap between the tools that the officers currently have before getting to the lethal firearm. That's the main purpose of it. Now, some of these studies, they started way back in 2005, 10-ish, is when they started coming out. There have been some changes, policy changes, law changes. A lot of legislation has come through since then, based on a lot of the research that's been done now, and a lot of the field studies that have been done out there. That in short is basically the reason for it, what we're looking at, and the training that will go with it. You could actually you could ask Shane, because I trained him at the academy many moons ago. I am really high on the training part. That's a must for just about everything that we do, even in the court race. That's in short. Any questions? Yes, sir.
How many cases end up escalating to the point where we specifically on these campuses?
Not a whole lot, thankfully. In Cupertino and Los Altos Hills, not a whole lot. And that's a good thing, right? How many does it take? This takes one. Not too far from here, which direction am I? So west of here, I think 1 or 2 blocks north, just on the other side of 280. I want to say about a year ago, the sheriff's office was out there with somebody who's, they just barricaded themselves with a weapon. So you never know what's going to happen, but I can tell you, I think it was the last gun that was taken off somebody here on this campus. The last 2 were in our parking lots. One back on that side of the campus and one up in parking lot B. So you never know. That I can tell you from personal experience. You just don't know what individuals may have. And like I said, actually there was one of the firearms that was is in the locker room. This is before I came though. There's a shotgun, camouflage colored shotgun. And I asked one of the officers what that was, where that one was from. Well, somebody was gonna go shoot a teacher with that shotgun. Scary to think that, but you just don't know what's gonna happen. And we're in probably one of the safest areas in the country, in our state, and in our Bay Area. Or Santa Clara County area too. But it does happen. So if we were able to predict who's going to have a gun, that'd be great. That's the one thing about this job, it's just, you don't know, just don't know. Any other questions?
So, taser appears to be like a pretty versatile weapon, like not lethal, it's not too dangerous, but is there a concern that a police officer, because of how versatile the taser is, would choose to use a taser when OC spray or baton to resolve the situation?
Yeah, good question. In other words, are there officers out there that may violate policy? Yes. That's why I wound up working in internal affairs. But there's policies there, and then there's investigations behind those policies too. Now I can tell you that there's always going to be somebody in probably pretty much all professions now. For law enforcement's out there, because they're out there in the field, and we have body worn cameras and a lot of that stuff. So there's 2 parts to that. Did they violate the policy? Right? Now, I'm sorry, it's Iris, right? So if Iris is a police officer. How big are you? 6'6", 6 feet wide, right? You're probably the biggest one here, right? Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, how big are you?
6'3".
6'3"?
Yeah.
Okay, so if both of them are officers and they have those same tools on there. And Iris uses a taser to stop him. But yet, I'm sorry, your name is Luca. Luca feels confident because he's wrestled in high school or something. Right? So it depends on the individual too. Right? What skills he may have, the size that he is. All those things go into a consideration. So, because Iris tased them, some people may be more upset, say, well, you know what? I know him. He's a nice guy, but something happened. Right? Does Iris know? No. Now, with Lucas, no, we don't know. When we come up with people or we talk to people, sometimes, and it's rare, but we do, there are some people that we deal with more often than others, so we may be a little bit more familiar. And again, there's all those considerations. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Frenchie.
Frenchie? Yeah. Okay, I don't mean to pick on you, but you're the biggest one here. So, I may know him very well. Know him to be very nice, but maybe for some reason he's just really upset. And I might not be able to control it. And that happens too. Human beings are I think Hanshu and I were discussing this in the meeting earlier. Human beings are an exception. You just never know with human beings. So to answer your question, yes, there could be a violation of policy, but we have to look at several things. What is Iris going to use versus look, right? Yes.
I guess I just have two concerns, because like you use the example of like Luca and Iris versus Richie, and like Luca might use more of his personal strength to address Richie, but that doesn't change that Richie might have a heart condition, or might be under like certain drugs or whatever, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's like, I don't think it's like, I think it's very like dangerous and you're putting too much of the chance to like put that in the decision of an officer to like decide whether like Verici is capable of being tased and not have like fatal like results.
You are 100% correct. You don't know. And I've seen people tased and it didn't work. We didn't know that either. You're 100% correct. How do we know that? Going there, you don't. Now, you still have that right to defend yourself. So if somebody his size came running at you, and you had a taser, I don't know, let's just make that scenario up, right? Are you gonna think about his heart condition? Does he have a heart condition? Yes or no? Are you still gonna tase him? Yes or no? That's your choice. And those are decisions that officers have to make. In those, and I kid you not, it's in split seconds or less. I've been shot at 3 times. And twice my gun was still in the holster. That's how fast it happens. So you may have to make that decision with somebody his size coming at you. Now, that is the reality of it. We may not know, we may find out afterwards. But there's also a lot of other things that in the policies that were put in there because some of these studies that figured this out. Right, for instance, if we did tase him or you did tase him, you secure him, handcuff him, and then check his vitals, check his first aid, whatever first aid you have to render, CPR, if that's what you have to do. Fire and ambulance are called. and that's an automatic. Sometimes they get there before, I mean, if we know a taser's been deployed and you're still trying to talk the person out of it, sometimes we're caught even before. So, those are some of the things that are done and written in policies nowadays because of a lot of those studies. Now, is it 100% guaranteed? No.
I guess just that, like, what you mentioned is that we want to have like, in between of like the baton and the gun. But then if Branchi does have a heart condition, that kind of like turns into a firearm. It has the same result. And, I mentioned I had two concerns. The second concern I had was like, do your officers go through any type of like anti-racist training?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the Chiefs Advisory Committee we've gone through a lot of things to educate what we wind up doing, and they wind up creating these two categories of training that we go through. One of them is state mandated training, that there's things that we absolutely positively have to do, right? And then one of the other type of training is a lot of the soft training. The racial profile, as a matter of fact, I teach them.
I don't mean to interrupt, but can I get a motion to extend this discussion?
I think to extend discussion by. No questions. 10 minutes?
10 minutes, and anybody second? Isaac, second. Okay, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Any objections, I apologize. Any objections?
Can you run the board meetings?
Okay, 10 more.
What was I?
Teaching anti-racist.
Yeah, so yes, all that training. So the Chiefs Advisory Committee now call them Danny mandated training. Because I insist on that. And matter of fact, we have the data. Our training in this area is probably higher than any other policing agency. Because I insist on that. That requires two things to be able to do it. Staffing and resources. Because even free training, if you were to provide us free training, half of the police department has to be doing the job while the other one gets trained. And in the following week or the next day, they flip it. So I'm paying time and a half for that free training. So it does cost money. And the board or the advisory committee is fully aware of that, and they support all the training that we've done. Matter of fact, some of them have joined us. That's on the other hand.
Also, what situations, like a taser would be the appropriate tool for? Like, would it be in the same situation as a firearm? Or would it be like more open to be used? Like,
It's known as a less lethal weapon, and that's because it is. You're more likely to be hurt or killed with a firearm, a lot more. And there's numbers out there too. I mean, the difference is huge. And not only being a fatal injury, but injuries have been diminished as well for both officers and individuals that have been tased. Because again, I'll pick on you again, but Branchi, if we were fighting, and I didn't do that, it's just the longer fights go on, the more likelihood that there's injuries. If he and I were fighting, it would probably be pretty short because he's huge. You know, and not only am I short and fat, I'm old. So it's probably gonna be a short fight. But you never know. I am trained in a few things, so I might last a little longer. So, you know, you just never know what it is, but the difference between the taser and the firearm, there's a big gap there.
which like situation would like be appropriate for taser then?
I'm sorry?
Which situation would like require the use of taser?
Again, when there's somebody that has that individual I talked about with an axe, right? Who here's would go and approach them and try to get that axe away from them? Huh? I can't run, but I wouldn't go up to them. I can tell you that much. I've seen, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of things. But I wouldn't want to get close to them. So again, that's the situation in which I would use a taser or a firearm. If I didn't have a taser, I would have to use a firearm. And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
So, okay, first, yeah, I kind of agree with you. If I see a children at me, my first instinct is to run. But I'm currently serving in the military, and something I've learned is that regulations and policies are only as good as those who enforce it. The reason why I'm doing it is because not too long ago in the field training, after a live training exercise, we went back to barracks at night, and anything happened, leg between discharge. And just thinking about the layers of failures, range safety didn't check the barrel, NCO didn't clear the barrel, they didn't check the soldier on ammo, the soldier didn't get his weapon on safety, went back to barracks, never checked it, and it happened at night. So, I mean, there's so many policies, and you've been trained in live firearm. I think you know how many policies we are taught to prevent such things from happening. Like, I never thought that could happen. Just in the middle of night, just bang.
Okay.
What? That was my company, very luckily. But yeah, so how do you make sure that, you know, you have regulations and policy, but they stay complacent enough, not for some frankly idiot to just fire unnecessarily?
First of all, training. And then training. And then training. But that's not just the individuals themselves, but it's also supervising. Training and making sure that they're held accountable too. So is it 100%? No. And again, I go back to the humans factor, right? But are you less likely to have an accident or maybe identify that, like you said, idiot sooner rather than later? And again, taking those actions immediately or as soon as possible is probably what's going to help the most. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, how do I say this? I'm a stickler for policies and rules. And again, because I've seen people hurt. So they're there for, like you said, absolutely those reasons. After I came out of internal affairs, I realized that I actually, as a supervisor, could have done a lot more to prevent some of these issues that have come up with teams that I have. In that, I walked away with I was a lot more educated when I worked in internal affairs, where you investigate officers. So policies, rules, and training, and holding people accountable. And I should be held accountable for holding them accountable. But it should be a fair investigation too, thorough one. As the law describes it, it's on the totality of the circumstances. Because we talked about Richie probably, I think he's a nice guy and everything like that, but he had a heart issue. That was the ones she brought up. But how do I know that? So everything is based on the totality of the circumstances, right? Okay, what the officer knows at the time. So,
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask, because I feel like a lot of the discussion has been around like we don't know like how like an officer would react in like a particular situation in terms of like maybe a situation doesn't require the use of a taser and then they end up using it anyway. So do we have any, I don't know, like data or information on like how many officers within like this that would be like serving this community, and that would be having the tasers like have done something like that against like policy? Like, do we know like what kind of?
Right, so there are complaints that come in from the public or that we may initiate ourselves. And the basics of the complaint are actually posted on our website, but also with the state. And, you know, not the details because we can't by law. But the generalities are there. And Ranjay, since I picked on you, I saw your hand up too.
Yeah, just had like a quick, I feel like a lot of it is just like, I think a lot of the questions are kind of similar to each other, so I just wanted to ask like a straight question. So I know if the tasers are implemented, right? Is there like a comprehensive plan, like an exact plan that you might have on how they're trained and how they can identify situations and things? Is it like do you have like a list by any chance, or is it too broad?
Well, it is a little broad, but again, I go back to the training. And a lot of it's dependent on that. And it's not gonna sound good, right? Both Shane and I actually worked the city of San Jose I did for 29 years and Shane for 27 years. What happens in San Jose is very different than in this area, right? Over there, you came across a lot of, let's just call them, intense situations a little bit more frequently. But because it was frequent or a little bit more frequent, you kind of been through it, right? So it's like training. Here, we don't have that, thank goodness. So we have to supplement that with something. And that something is training. For example, we're required to qualify with our weapons twice a year. I make sure that we go 4 times a year. So those are the types of things. And the policies themselves would actually address some of the issues that you brought up with the medicals and some of the research has been done. So the training, the policies, and then the accountability for me and all the supervisors.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can I get a motion to extend the discussion time?
I really want you to run the board meeting.
Yeah, I'm going to extend by, like, can we go 15 minutes and early if we need to?
Anybody second? Aaron? Second. Sorry, what's your name?
Adrian.
Adrian. Okay, so moved by Adrian, seconded by Aaron. Any objections? No objections. I just want to add, after you answer her question, if you could also answer some voices that weren't answered in the back side of the room there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I'm right-handed too.
Yeah, so in the recent past, there have been like several cases where police officers are intending to draw their taser and are actually drawing their firearm. Because in the heat of the moment, like all training goes out the window, right? Not all, but due to their like similar weight, similar feel, then they like draw their firearm and in the heat of the moment, use the firearm and either like wound or fatally kill someone. Like at this point, you said not a single bullet has been fired.
Sure.
Yeah, on our campus. And if we did have the tasers, how would you ensure that it stays that way? That even if they're like intending to use their taser, that they don't use their firearm. It's like, it's, you know, how it's like a baton, a pepper spray, they're gonna feel very different in the belt than a firearm, but a taser, not so much. And I had a second, kind of thing.
So to answer that, most of the times that has happened, it's only happened a few times. One of them was up here in Oakland. Another one, there was a more recent one that was about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. Both of the times they had their taser on the same side that they had the firearm. One of the things that the study showed was exactly that, and it was actually right after the Oakland one. And this was done at San Jose, and I would intend to do it here. And now, as of January 1st, it's law. So if I'm right-handed, like I said, my firearm would be on this side. The taser's gonna be on this side. It has to be on that side. So again, to your point, you're absolutely right. The feel of the taser is very different than the gun itself, but you look at it, it looks like a gun, but it's a whole lot lighter. And it does feel different though. But those would be some of the things that we would do. For those that carry, wear vests, Shane has a vest on. Sometimes they put their equipment on there. Same thing, it would be on the opposite side. Firearms on this side, taser would be on that side.
Well, I have heard of that theory, but I've also seen like other, contrasting evidence that says that under stress, that kind of goes out the window, right? That
That is-
sometimes under stress, people do the exact opposite. And due to like more training on firearms, that they're going to go for their firearm, like subconsciously.
Well, one of the things that, and I don't, again, you have to look at what their training was
Yeah.
too. You're right about that. So whenever we would train with the firearms, at that same training, right after that, the taser training would go. So in other words, we'd be doing the training, the taser training when we come to here as well. And, I don't even know if there's a law about how many times you have to practice. I think once a year here in California. But it's done in the same location during the same day.
And I have one final thing. So we are a college campus, right? And while we do have police officers on our campus, we want them to be like, as like approachable as possible. Like, it's kind of hard to sometimes fight the stigma of people are afraid of police officers, period. They come up to them, they're gonna be scared even if they've done nothing wrong.
Right.
Right? So if we do have people, like, if we're, like, it's going to be, if we give them tasers, that's making them more heavily armed. Right? How are we going to combat that sort of like fear? How are we going to ensure that students are not afraid of police officers on campus, even if they do have tasers?
So I would kind of ask, actually, this was asked to me the other day, because I was kind of presenting the same scenario, right? I wanted to see what somebody thought about it. And they said, well, so if you had a taser, but you've always had a gun, the taser is less lethal. Why are you more afraid? Because you got the more lethal one on your side. Now, that means one more tool, right? So, and you're right, people are going to be afraid of it. Now, we tried doing a lot of things. Matter of fact, this was the first time, second time I was asked to come here, and I'm here. Those are some of the things that we try to do so that you can at least get to know us. That's why I brought Jay with me. So, again, those are some of the things that we try to do for that.
And respond to that, it's like, people, they know a police officer is not going to use a gun unless they absolutely have to. Same with pepper spray, because it, like, the police officer get by that, and baton, because there's a kind of like psychological thing that happens. People don't like to hit other people, they kind of, but with the taser, there's little harm to the police officer. Like, there's little risk to the police officer, so they might be more likely to use it than they would any of those other options, and therefore people might be more afraid that a police officer is going to use it if they are armed with it.
Well, again, it's going to depend, right? Iris is going to use something that I may not use or vice versa. And again, it goes back when you reinvestigate an officer violation of policy, we try to make sure, and then it actually says that you have to consider everything that the officer may know or not know. So Iris is going to write that, you know, I don't know, I'm just going to guess, she's 60 pounds or 70 pounds, and you know, I guess somebody who's 6'6". You know, again, and then you see me, and, you know, you make point to my experience and what have you. Yeah, maybe I should. But those are all the things that do go into not only the thoughts that an individual has, an individual officer, but also an investigation. And that's why those things take forever, they take a while. But good question. And I'm sorry, I'm over here, right, Luca?
Yes. It's kind of similar to what Chanel and Cleveland said. How will campus police ensure that
to the school body that these spaces won't be given the wrong man and to be responsibly used.
They have firearms, and that's what I mean. To try to pull one out is a little difficult now, can an officer be overtaken? Yeah, that happens. And usually the first one, when that happens, the officer gets shot and killed. Not that that makes it any easier, but it can happen. I mean, that can happen with anything, right? They can take, the pump as well. They can take, the handcuffs, radios. Those are. So yeah, that's always a likelihood. That's always a likelihood, and that's why, the security of the holster in which either the firearm is carried in. They're. Most of them, they have what we call, 3 points that you have to do to actually take it out. And it takes practice.
I have a question regarding, sorry, I have lots of questions. So one, I was just looking at the data that FHA have posted for, the number of, reported, crimes or like just reported with any suspicious activity on campus. And I was just wondering, like, what, I was just looking at all of these, it's like vandalism, there's a bunch of vehicular stuff. So I guess like, what is the requirement for TSL now, which would have been useful for in past cases? Like,
Okay, so where did that information come from?
from police.phd.
Okay, so that's the clarity report. The clarity report is very specific to some what they actually asked for us to post on there. And doesn't cover everything. All the costs for service. There's homicides, sexual assaults and some weapons clause and things like that. So that's part of it now. The other, those are on campus, right? We actually do go to off campus oftentimes to deal with some of our community members. Maybe a student that had a hard time with something. And doing a welfare check and some of those things. Fortunately, none of those have gone south on us. But again, we humans are different. Some of us are a little bit more violent than others. So again, you can't just base it on just that. And I don't think anybody here born before 2001?
Born before,
Yeah,
way before.
yeah, we don't count. So in 2001, you're all aware of what almost happened here, right? And again, the Anza College was a quiet community college. And somebody who actually built bombs and had the weapons ready to use the very next day was going to school. It was just found out because a young lady who worked at a drugstore, back then you had to take your cameras to get film developed. And by law, they had to go through them. She noticed these pictures that he took of himself. Called her father, who was a sergeant in San Jose. They followed up. And the next day, when he was supposed to come on campus and set off those bombs. And probably shoot a lot of people. We're thinking it's because they had never had. My sister used to work there. When we saw the map, one of the bombs was supposed to be right over her head. Again, I look back, so somebody had asked about how many times do these things happen? Not very often, thank God. Right, and you've all seen the news now about active shooters and what have you. It's unfortunate, but they do happen. If we could predict that it would never happen here, we would never have to carry weapons.
Sorry, I had more questions. So would you consider a TSL versus an escalation of police force or a de-escalation of what you have? Because you're deciding between like you have the baton as like the upper end of obviously guns on the question that's way up there, and then you have the pepper spray on the lower end, and the TSL is kind of in the middle, correct?
Somewhere in the middle, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just wondering why it's in the middle because
Well, taser, component, and OC spray are pretty much the same. They're just used differently.
Right, so what would a taser be used for that pepper spray could be used for?
Distance, and again, who's affected?
Are you aware of which, result you're gonna be purchasing?
We don't know yet. We're looking at a few of them, we're learning about them and see what the pros and cons are with them. A lot of them are now, fortunately, when it's taken out of its holster, it activates the camera, the body worn camera, so we can tell that it's taken out. Whether they use it or not is different. But as soon as it's taken out, it's recorded. So that, I'm happy about that.
This will because of the human factor, so sometimes accident will happen, and should we educate when we equip the officer with the taser, so should we educate the student, so on what basis they can be protected from being the victim, and also how they can like reduce the risk of being shot by the taser, so we educate students what basic they can do in under the misunderstanding circumstances, so what procedure they can follow to reduce the risk of being misunderstood and being shot. So should we do?
Yeah, and those are some of the things that we try to train also the officer, right? Because, you know, maybe I've noticed somebody that's not, it doesn't seem like they're understanding me for whatever reason, maybe a language barrier or what have you. So we practice those things too. They may be going through a crisis and, you know, so maybe take note of that. So those are things that, for the officer side of it, right? As far as citizens, is that a lot of times, most of the time is, you know, trying to listen to the officers, see what it is that they need at the time. So, and I've gone up to people who apparently have did some really bad things and you fit the description, white t-shirt, gray pants and black shoes, right? Turned out to be the wrong person. And I show them the call for service and you look at it and you go, oh, all right. But we don't know, and that's why, you know, when we tell people to call 911, we tell them to give as much detail as possible. You know, because he and I could be wearing the same clothing. But you know, maybe something different. One short guy, another big guy, and a tall handsome guy. Okay, what's me? Right? So again, those are some of the things that people can do. I've had guns pointed at me when, well, I wasn't always a cop, let's just put it that way. Whatever the cop said, I did, and I'm still here. Hope you don't think that of me, don't you, anymore? Yes, sir.
So my question is, do you think that tasers could be a liability for the district? For example, let's use, Rachel's example, right? Let's say, he gets tased, right? Best case scenario, he goes in handcuffs, and that's it, right? But let's say he gets severely hurt, and his family decides to sue, right? Wouldn't that cost the district litigation and settlement costs?
You can read all kinds of reports, that put out the cost for that. If we had to shoot him, is there gonna be a lawsuit? Yeah, I can almost guarantee you it's more likely there's gonna be a lawsuit. Right, I've investigated those. And here I am asking for tasers so that the officers don't have to shoot somebody, right? Now let's think about this. Board of Trustees says no. Okay,
Sorry for interrupting. Can I get a motion to extend discussion time?
Move to extend by 5 minutes.
Any seconds? Yeah. And any objections?
me too. I'm just kidding.
Now we have to do a roll call.
Okay,
Yeah, we have to do it.
all right. So you're doing
They're doing it right now.
it? Oh, okay. Oh, you're doing it electronically? Yeah. I'm sure.
Lydia, you good? Yeah, the first, this is his first time doing it.
No.
That. Caitlin?
Yes, just to extend, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
No. I feel. Yeah. Okay, Joel, is Joel here? Okay. Javier, sorry. Ariana? Yes. Ian?
No.
Ed?
No.
Megan? No. Benjamin? Yes. Brandon?
No.
Don? Right.
Okay.
Christopher Wood?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Adrian? Yes. Donna? Yes. Jason?
No.
Nicholas?
No.
Kate? No. Matthew? Yes. Daniela? Unsuko? No. Eddie?
Yes.
Anish?
No.
Christina?
Yeah.
David? No. Unknown?
Yes. He just told me, he said no. It's in the bathroom though. Just the bicycle doors. Yeah. Show us the side, that's a great. Well.
Oh.
No, he will. Okay, wait, okay. No, no, you need a couple of things. Already, yeah. Either way. They're all too.
So it needed 2/3 vote, so it does fail.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, if you want more information, I'm more than happy to come back. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of other meetings. Okay, thank you all. Well, no, yes, I guess you're doing that pretty satisfied, right?
Okay.
And it's down here, it's hand.
I do not.
No, I think
No,
Nicholas is
and
going.
no, I would again.
Nicholas is going to present for you.
For who?
He's on.
Is that- Oh, okay, well, either way, but I just want, I just need to pull up,
What else is there?
an updated document as well. We were trying to get some more information.
Business item 3, it's about the holistic relations. Okay, so for business item number 3, here are the 2024-2025 Lavos news budget stipulation revisions. This item is to discuss and possibly approve revised 2024-2025 DSG budget stipulations for Lavos news, specifically on stipulations 31 and 32.
So, so this is what was attached with the agenda. Huh? Yeah. So the current 31 is, and this has been like this for many years, even pre-pandemic. So Laveau shall provide DHG with a 1/2 page of advertisement space per subscribed issue. The DHG marketing shall be responsible for the advertising space. The DHG marketing committee must work with Interclub Council on the Laveau's advertising space. So Laveau's came to finance, wanted to make some changes, and there was also some confusion going on during that process, or that, you know, before that process, in the changes that they had asked for. So the revised proposed 31 was, or that finance approved, is Laveau's news shall provide and associated student bodies with priced advertisements in print, online, and on their social media. This is a Laveau policy, so I'm not even sure why it's in our stipulations anyway, but either way, it's fine. But in addition, so this is where the stipulation really comes in. In addition, Laveau's news shall provide DHG with at least 3 free advertisements online and on social media, and at least 1 free 1/2 page of print advertisement space per quarter.
The DHG Marketing Committee shall be responsible for the advertising and must work with the Interclub Council for ICC advertisements. And then, we left part of it open because we wanted to include something about clubs. The original proposal from LeBeau's actually wanted to completely remove ICC because they were confused. They thought it also included all clubs, but it was not intended to do that. It was just about DHG and ICC, like in the club day advertisements or one of the big events, not individual clubs. So, so the finance committee said we'll work with Maritza to try and get some updated language. Oh, she added something new in where.
This is what I sent to Dennis earlier, what I just put in the
Yeah, I
chat.
have that open. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I have that in another window. So that was Article 30 or stipulation 31, and then no, okay, so here is what LeBeau said. So the additional sentence that clarifies information for clubs is individual city clubs will work with LeBeau's directly for their own advertisements and must complete a college life pre-authorization form to verify the availability of funds. Initially, the finance committee had just come up with this sentence, but then the question came up because it has happened before, and that's why we have the pre-authorization form. Is, sometimes clubs have gone to dining services, for example, ordered pizza for a meeting or whatever it might be, or an event. But then it turns out they don't actually have the money in their account, and so that, big issues arise. So a while back now, we created the pre-authorization form just so that somebody from the Office of College Life verifies their funds before the club can order food or request security or custodial services for an event. So this would be incorporated into that pre-authorization filter, so we can say, yes, this club has available funding and LeBeau's can go ahead and provide them the space they are trying to get. So that was 431. The addition about clubs anymore. Now, one thing that did come up during the meeting was 31. Okay, so LeBeau's initially did not want to have, and marketing committee, I believe, also said, at least this is what LeBeau's told us, that you did not want to have print at all in there anymore. However, the finance committee voted that they wanted to at least keep print in there as an option, even if DSP never decides, or DSG never decides to actually use it. They didn't want to just completely remove it. So that's just a clarification for the marketing, and if anyone from LeBeau's is listening. That's why print is still in there, but that doesn't mean we ever have to use it. So that is stipulation 31. So let's just do one at a time, I guess. So any questions about the 31? And it would, I guess the version to approve would be the one where it's a set, which is this one for 31. Let's see if I can make this picture.
Yes, yes.
Oh, so if I understand 31 correctly, you would just straight up get less things from LeBeau's, like less advertising space.
Don't know if that's necessarily true or not. We would still be getting at least 3 free advertisements online and social media. And at least one half-page of print per quarter, and that's if there is even a print off edition. Usually, I think they're only doing one per quarter now anyway, I believe, or is it one per month?
I don't think they did last quarter.
Huh?
I don't think they did that last quarter.
Yeah, I mean, marketing didn't even necessarily want to have print in there, but the finance committee said they would like to at least have it still remain as an option if DG ever wanted to.
So we still do have like the same amount of advertisement space, if not more, because we also have the online and social media option.
Yes.
So it's like,
Like I said, the original 31 was written many, many years ago. I don't even remember if they really had web or advertising much at that, or online, like so web or social media much at that time. And now, they don't even do much anymore anyway, so the old stipulation definitely wasn't, worth getting more. So yeah, so that's why there's still the need version is being proposed. If no questions, it'd probably be just cleaner to just do each one at a time. Is there a motion to approve the revised version of 31 submitted by Maritz with the changes she added?
I motion to approve, the advised version of 31 submitted by Red.
I second.
Okay, any objections? No objections?
Well, not again, but quick question. Is it free advertisement online and free on social media or just free in total? I'm not understanding that.
at least 3 will be free online and on social media, and 1/2 page on print.
Okay.
Yes. If they don't print that border, can we substitute that with? We have. Well, we can talk to them.
Any objections? No objections, so this passes.
So now number 32. I think there's, yeah, there's one about Maritza didn't make any changes to this one, so let's go back to the original. So this is what was submitted with the agenda. I do have a couple of notes. So the current, which again is from many, many years ago, is LeBeau shall put on their distribution racks. Student subscription to LeBeau is provided by DHG. The proposed, although there may be additional things needed, and I'll show that in a moment. Proposed is LeBeau's news shall state in the print editions on their website and on their distribution racks, if possible. Because apparently their distribution racks aren't necessarily managed by them, so they may or may not even be able to do anything on the distribution racks. But we still didn't want to remove it completely, which is what LeBeau wanted to initially. Student subscription to LeBeau's news is partially funded by the DSG. There was some discussion, I know, at finance and LeBeau's and had mentioned. Yeah, here. Okay, LeBeau's news. So LeBeau's have been using, LeBeau's news is partially funded by the Indiana student government on their on the website and so on. But I wish they were here because they were going to discuss this at their meeting, LeBeau's anyway. However, the term student subscription initially was specifically chosen many years ago for a reason. DSG and LeBeau's News wanted to clearly show and maintain that it is a First Amendment to newspaper, like they say on their in their headline or whatever it's called. Both about LeBeau's News sites. And both DSG and LeBeau's didn't want there to be any appearance, even unintentionally, that LeBeau's News is a quote unquote state-run newspaper because it is funded by the government. So that's why, the term student subscription to LeBeau's was initially, coined. Now, student subscription may not be the best sounding term, perhaps. So maybe student access could be used instead, if that is something that the DHG Senate would want. If that is the case, it could be instead LeBeau's News shall state in the print editions on their website and on the distribution rights, if possible. Student access to LeBeau's News is partially funded by the student government. And yeah, that's what was it basically. So we're not necessarily pushing one or the other. Maybe the Senate has a preference. So Student subscription to Logos News is partially funded by the Indiana student government, or student access to Logos News is partially funded by the student government. Those are two, options that kind of fall in line with what DSG has thought of in the past. Logos News' preference is just keep it the way they've been doing it, but that may or may not be the best. Because it doesn't necessarily, clearly show what DSG and Logos were initially intending to show. So this is their current, I think this is from the website. But it says Logos News is partially funded by the DNZ student government, and it's, yeah, well, we don't need to worry about that one. So yeah, so that's number 32, basically.
So can I have a motion to move on?
Or any questions or any questions first?
I maybe finance, we know that like possibly, do you know how possibly, how these funding levels?
Whatever it says in the DSG budget, I mean, we're not funding it 100%.
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve the budget stipulate, the changes to budget stipulation number 32?
What would I say if I wanted to make a motion to do the student access to Logos News wording?
So you would just say, instead of saying, I move to, approve the, or the simplest thing would be, I move to approve the revised, stipulation number 32 with student access instead of student subscription.
I move to approve the revised 32 budget stipulation with student access instead of student subscription.
Does that give a second? Any objections? No objections, so budget stipulation 32 revised. So it's not student subscription, it's student access is passed. Thank you very much, Dennis. Before I say this, I want to say, senators, please remain seated. But if there's any prospective senators that need to put down their second meeting, like record their second meeting in a Zoom, now is the time.
Well, first or second, they still have, required meetings to live. Write name and which meeting number. Okay, two bars at the bottom. Okay, are there any public comments? Yeah.
Really quick, I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows here that in the Lavos print newspaper, they mentioned Ted's Windex as a fifth drink. This is not an official drink that was approved by marketing or Power Cup. So please do not ask for it at Power Cup because Jared has already told me complaints that students are asking for this drink. And I want the record to show that I'm disappointed in Lavos and the advisor and the writer for including something that did not need to be included. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
Yeah, I also have a public comment about Lavos, because recently I was misquoted in an article, and not even misquoted, like I never even talked to them, but they just like threw my name in there that I did a quote. And so I kind of wanna talk to the Lavos students and also like the advisor to make sure that as like student journalists, they're learning to report with integrity and have like journalism ethics in mind when they're doing reports. And so if anyone has had an experience like where they've been misquoted by Lavos or an article came out and it was like they use your quotes, but then it wasn't like what you had said at all pretty much, or like they misrepresented you, misquoted you. Please reach out to me or Chris as well, because we're trying to like speak with the advisor hopefully and like actually make sure that these students are learning to just have integrity, be ethical, not be Mickey Mouse, and make good choices.
Can I just comment on that real quick? I am meeting with the advisor and the dean and my dean next Thursday to address the announcements, which are very valid.
Are there any- Are there any other public comments? Are there any final advisor announcements?
No, but I want to do this, so stick around if you want to win one of the gift certificates or the, what do you call this?
Then I think that is all. I join this meeting at 5:52 PM.
To win that.